You're listening to the Served Up Show, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful content. Your hostesses, Bridget Albert, is best known as the Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with over 25 years of experience. And I'm Julie Milroy, best known for my passion for leading change and helping others grow in their careers. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry.
Hey y'all, it's Bridget here. Today we have a true luminary in the industry joining us, Eric Hemer, a rare gem holding the prestigious titles of Master of Wine and Master Sommelier. As a Senior Vice President and Director of Wine Education at Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits, Eric is at the forefront of shaping the future of wine. From vineyards to vintages, Eric takes us on an exclusive journey behind the scenes of the wine world, offering a glimpse into what it truly takes to become an expert. With his wealth of knowledge and expertise, he's here to share insights, anecdotes, and perhaps a few secrets from the cellar. So get ready to swirl, sniff, and sip as we dive into the world of wine with Eric. Pour yourself a glass of your favorite wine and join us for this captivating conversation. Eric, welcome to Served Up. I am absolutely honored and thrilled to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you, Bridget. It's about time I finally made it.
Can you tell our listeners a bit about your background? Where did you grow up? What really inspired you to enter the wine world, where it took you, and where you are today?
Sure, I can do that. I actually was born in Alexandria, Virginia, a long, long time ago, and lived in a lot of places up north. My dad was the perpetual transferee. He worked for MetLife. And as he was working his way up the corporate ladder, they kept moving him from market to market. So I lived in 5 different states before I was 7. So all over the place. But I moved to Florida in 1971. So I suppose I'm about native status by now. It just depends on who you ask. But I've been in Florida for quite some time. So I really did my final growing up in the state. Just finished, actually, recently. I finally made it into adulthood. And I got the wine bug a long time ago. I had no intention of actually going into the wine trade. I was working in the restaurant business at the time. Actually started washing dishes when I was 14 and worked my way up to busboy and into the dining room, as most people do, and ended up as the dining room manager in a great steakhouse in West Palm Beach. And it was there because the manager was really, really into wine, and he would hold Saturday morning wine classes at 9 a.m. And you can imagine young restaurant workers working late on Friday night, going out and partying and having a great time. And most people, the last thing they wanted to do Saturday morning was crawl out of bed and go to a wine tasting at the place they just left the night before. But for me, it was an epiphany. I really dug it. I've always been into history and geography, and those things really dovetail nicely with wine. So it really just fired up the passion for wine in me. And of course, I quickly realized that as a restaurant server, I could make a lot more money by selling more wine. Hard to sell a customer 2 entrees. Most people don't buy 2 desserts, but if you can add on by selling wine, it was a real check builder. And that really was very motivational for me. But it was also the beginning of my lifelong love with wine. So that's how I got started. It was a great place. Great time in my life. This was the early 80s. And like I said, I really never had any intention of getting into the wine business per se. But after my wife and I met and started dating, and she was working a standard day job, I realized that, nighttime employment was probably going to be a bit of an issue with a relationship. So I started looking around, and the manager of the restaurant I was working for was very good friends with somebody from Southern Wine and Spirits, our wonderful company. And I started asking him, hey, tell me what it's like to work as a sales consultant for Southern. Is that something I could do? And he said, yeah, you've got a good wine knowledge for it. You sell right now, restaurant employees are selling every night. That's what you do for a living. And you'd probably be good at it. So unfortunately, they didn't have any positions available. And it took me almost 2 years of finally groveling and begging, Southern for a job. I said, come on, just try me out. Give me a job. They finally came up with a route for me. And it was one of those routes from hell that most people, shudder over. I had like 290 accounts, and most of those were C&D accounts that hadn't been called on for years. So there's zero business. So that with a handful, it was kind of like an expansion draft baseball team. Okay, let's create a new route for this guy and take all the old has-been players from other teams and maybe give them one or two up-and-comers and maybe one bona fide all-star player. So I had this awful route, and the geography was terrible. It went from the Martin County, Palm Beach County line in Florida, which is quite a ways north, all the way down to mid-Broward County. So for us Floridians, we know where that is. But it was about 75, 80 miles in length, which was way too big for a sales territory. But I finally got it whittled down to a decent account size and found out quickly where the good accounts were and did my best to develop the other accounts. But it was my foray into Southern Wine and Spirits. And this was in 1988. So this is my 35th year with the company. So I've been around the block, quite a few times with Southern. And after that, I progressed into management at Southern. And in 1995, I was the general sales manager for Southern Wine and Spirits of South Florida. So I ran the wine division. And not too long after that, in 1998 was about 1998, was about the time that the Chaplin family started to really expand our footprint around the country. When I started, Southern was just in 3 markets. So it was much smaller. And about that time, they said, if we're really going to be a nationwide competitor, we need to be better and faster than our competition. And part of that was to put on dedicated educational posts, which we really didn't have prior to that. Most people that were in charge of wine education wore multiple hats, and you were also a portfolio manager or, some type of, district manager, sales manager, or something at the time. And so we really didn't have educational posts. So Florida, California, and Nevada, which were our big 3 markets at the time, they put on people, and they offered me the job for Florida. And after a decade in sales and sales management, I was very happy to get back into my original love for fine wine and become the educational director for Southern Wine and Spirits of Florida. And that was in 1998. So that's kind of how I got into education with Southern. And about the same time, I figured, well, if I'm going to be the educational director, I better start getting some certification. And this was back in the early days when not a lot of people knew about the Court of Master Sommeliers or the Society of Wine Educators or the Institute of Masters of Wine. And I barely knew about the organizations myself. I was really only peripherally aware. But I figured, well, I'll start with Society of Wine Educators. And I passed their highest level, which was Certified Wine Educator. And that was in right around 2000, I guess, 99, 2000. And then this is a great story. Mel Dick came to me. And we're talking one day. Mel Dick is the president of the wine division. For those of you out there who might not know who he is, a legend in the wine industry and president of our wine division. One of our very first employees, actually the very first wine employee, I think he'll tell you, back in 1969. But he said, Hemer, I'd like you to become a master sommelier. And I'm like, okay. What's a master sommelier? I really had no idea. And I looked it up and I said, oh, okay, this is really cool. I wasn't really aware because it was sort of prior, to the days when it really became popular in the United States. So I said, all right, well, I'll give it my best shot, sir. And I went out and did the intro course. And back then they didn't have the certified sommelier level. So I did the introductory course, did well on that, passed it, first attempts, all was well, and started studying for the advanced program with some other people at Southern and some of our friends out in the trade, a couple of sommeliers. Virginia Phillip actually was one who's the in charge of beverage at the Breakers and has her own, I should say, chain of wine shops now because she has two, one in Palm Beach and one in Delray Beach. But Virginia she came to Florida about the same time. And Laura De Pasquale, who is our senior vice president and runs our Domain and Estates division, who you well know, Bridget. The three of us became kind of the three amigos, and we started studying together, and we worked our way through advanced together. And ultimately, in 2002, Virginia passed the Master Sommelier level. I passed in 2003, and Laura will kill me if I get the date wrong, but I believe she was 2004. And so the three of us all sort of became Master Sommeliers together. So it was a huge accomplishment for all of us. But at one time we felt, oh my God, we're never going to pass this thing. It's just.
That is incredible. I did not know that.
Yeah, we were. And I tell people all the time, I just said, don't try to go alone. Don't do this thing alone. It's not a good solo attempt. Master sommeliers are social people. We love restaurants. We love the scenario of being in restaurants and turning people on to great wine. I said, there's safety in numbers. It's really so much easier to study with others at the same level, going for the same goal. You take turns, when you practice service, you sit down, you're the customer, I'll get up, I'm the sommelier, and, so on and so forth. We tasted together and practiced theory together. And so, yeah, it was a great time in our lives. So just to continue the Mel Dick story, I went to Mel and I said, Mel, here it is, 2003, 4 years later. You asked me to become a master sommelier, and I did it. I'm a master sommelier. It just happened. And he goes, oh, that's great, Hema. He goes, but master sommelier, did I say that? I said, yes, sir, master sommelier. He said, oh, I meant master of wine. I'm like,
oh my God.
Okay. Well, I said, that's an entirely different program. He goes, I'm sorry, but that's what I meant. He says, do you think you can do that one too? And I'm thinking to myself, well, let me see. I believe there are two other people in the world, Doug Frost and Ron Wiegand, who were both, and at the time, Gerard Basset, rest in peace, God bless him, was also one of the three people in the world that had both titles. And they're both very difficult achievements and quite different. Most people don't realize that getting into it, but they're very, very different programs, as I was soon to find out. And I said, okay, Mel, I'll give it the old college try, do my best, and went off on the road to pursuit of the Master of Wine diploma, which was a long, long road. It was very different. Having passed the tasting portion of the Master Sommelier examination recently really helped me when I went to sit the Master of Wine exam for the first time in 2005, and a little bit of luck, a little bit of skill, I passed the tasting portion in my first go round, which is kind of unusual in the MW program. Most people, by far and away, over 90%, I'd say, if I had to guess, pass theory first, which is the first part of it, and then tasting they struggle with a little bit, many of them, and ultimately pass that. And then there's a third part called the research paper. So it's very much like getting a high-level postgraduate degree in college, like a PhD program for wine. But there's a lot of science involved. It was all wine all the time. Master Sommelier incorporates anything beverage that's on-premise based, spirits and wine and beer and perry and ciders and all the other things. And of course, service and hospitality, the business of wine. Whereas MW is really, just a very, very deep dive into the world of wine, starting with viticulture, working through winemaking and marketing and the business of wine and so on and so forth, contemporary issues related to wine. Very, very challenging program. And it's all written. It's all written essay format, as opposed to the MS, which is all verbal at the master's level. So it was quite a different program, but as I got into it, it was overwhelming. It was frustrating. I struggled mightily with theory for several years. And I was literally down to my last attempt at theory before I would have to sit out and take some time off. And I managed to pull myself through, and I passed it in 2010. So it was a 5-year struggle before I really finally was able to pass this thing and become a master of wine. So it was well earned, and it really was a humbling experience, and I think made me not only a more knowledgeable wine professional, but also a more humble individual. And, I really, really appreciate, what I had to go through to become a master of wine. So I was able to finally go to Mel Dick and say, well, okay, Mel, I finally achieved your original goal, like with my fingers crossed, hoping he wasn't going to say, oh, I meant something else and throw another one at me. So at that time I said, I think I'm pretty much done. I've passed the MS program and the MW program. What else is there? But there's always something else out there.
Yeah,
Now,
there is. And the world of wine is constantly changing, but you are incredibly humble. Can you talk to, how many folks are masters of wine who have gone through the program? Can you give us like a little more of a peek behind the scenes of the difference? You mentioned it at a high level, but I mean, do you have a study buddy? Like, are you able, is there coursework involved? I
yeah,
mean, what support is given for those that are listening that might be interested in taking that leap?
Sure. For the MW program you're talking about. Yeah. So the MW program is very rigorous. There is a very strict entry program. You have to be able to pass to get accepted into the program. And it consists of having a sponsor, whether it's an MW or another high-level industry professional behind you. You have to have X amount of time in the wine trade. I think it's 5 years. Don't quote me, but I think it's 5 years. And you have to pass a mock exam, a tasting exam, and theory exam by submitting written essays. And once you are accepted into the program, then there is a protocol that you have to go through. Every student has to attend the residential seminars, which are held more or less, the same time of the year, January, February, in one of the places around the world where they're held. Here in the U.S., it's typically Napa, or it has been for the past few years. In England, it's London. This is a London-based organization that was established in the 1950s, or in one of the other markets like Australia. And then there are other programs that you can attend, course day programs, which are not mandatory, but which are highly recommended to do some intense work. So it is a solo pursuit, but I encourage all students, and I have many mentees in the program, both official and unofficial, to get together with others and form study groups. The MW website is very interactive and has lots of forums and study group offers, and it's truly an international program. We look at wine, from a global point of view, and you have to be very knowledgeable about the way wine is bought and sold around the world in many, many different markets. And of course, a lot of U.S. students tend to get tunnel vision and only look at our system, which is a bit different than most systems around the world in that it's a 3-tier system, as you well know. In most markets, it's not. It's a 2-tier system. So it's kind of a foreign concept to European students studying the U.S. 3-tier system. And because you're an American and you know about the 3-tier system, you're always welcome in international study groups because you will quickly become, the group expert on the American 3-tier system, and vice versa. For understanding some of what Americans think are strange things like VAT, value-added tax, VAT taxes, and the different levies and taxes on wine around the world, and this interesting way that wine is marketed. So it's really good to get into study groups for both tasting and theory, and really work with each other and do practice essays. And successful students do that. It's very hard to go it completely alone. So that's a little bit of what the program looks like. Once you are accepted in the program, you have to take a stage 1 examination in June. And if you pass that successfully, the theory and tasting portions of that, they call it the practical tasting portion, you're accepted as a stage 2 student. And then you go to a different seminar, which is a little bit more focused on tasting because, like I said, most people pass theory first. And so we sort of put the stage 2 and then the practical only or theory only students, those students that have passed one portion or another, which is, allowed. That's, very few people pass both portions simultaneously. It's very hard to do. And then their focus, of course, if they're practical only, is 100% tasting on passing that second leg of the examination. once you are successful and pass both, and this typically takes, I mean, theoretically it could be done in 3 years, but we're talking 5 years or even longer in some cases to get both of those parts under your belt. Then you are required to write a research paper, for which there is quite a bit of support from the MW community. We have paper advisors that will help you choose a topic, or at least they'll tell you whether it's a good topic or not, and then help you fine tune it as you go through the process of writing the paper. And once you've completed all 3 parts of the exam, you are invited to join the Institute of Masters of Wine as a member in MW. So it's quite a procedure.
It sure is. And it's just an incredible and very thoughtful procedure, as it should be, because it comes with a very hefty title, right?
It does. It does. And it's a title with a lot of gravitas too. As an MW, you are looked upon to, and an MS too, of course, for that matter. I think we're all aware of the recent issues that the Court of Master Sommelier has, and we're looked upon as, industry professionals at the very highest level who are expected to, carry themselves accordingly out there in the marketplace. So there's a lot of responsibility, and it was a lot of work, but it was very rewarding, and I wouldn't change anything, even the duration of time it took me to pass, because it made me really, really appreciate, what it takes to earn that title of Master of Wine.
It's incredible. Congratulations on all of your success.
Oh,
it is. I think that your story will inspire absolutely so many. I would love to know, and I think our listeners would love to know, why you love wine.
That's a good question. Well, and I think the answer is multitude. As I mentioned early on, I've always had a passion for history, a passion for geography. I love 4 seasons. I love climates. I love going to places that have a winter, spring, summer, or fall, which is why I'm here in South Florida. Not really. And it's just sort of, wine has always dovetailed into those other subjects that I find so fascinating. And because it's such a diverse beverage, I mean, there's so many different grape varieties and regions of origin of production and styles of wine that come from all these magical places, that it's just, it can be daunting and intimidating to a lot of people that are new to wine. But once you get into it, you get hooked. And I'm not alone. And obviously in that respect, ask any fine wine professional, they'll give you a similar answer. And once you start, once you have the basics on your belt, then you're always looking for the next great region of production, or the next interesting grape variety or blend of varieties or wine style. I mean, these days, orange wine and pet nats and all these, what we consider to be new styles of wine, which are actually quite old styles of wine, but are interesting. And it's always changing. There's new trends, just like in spirits and mixology. There's always new spirits and new cocktails to be learned about and experienced. And I think, wine and spirits are somewhat the same in that respect. Maybe for a long time, it was kind of the classic regions. Back when I started, France was the pinnacle of the wine world for fine wine, followed maybe by Germany, which surprised a lot of people. We had lots of wines from the Mosel Valley and the Rheingau on our wine lists, and California and other, non-European regions like Chile and Argentina and Australia were still kind of on the horizon at the time. It was really knowing the classics. So we got a great, schooling in Burgundy and Bordeaux and Champagne and the Rhone Valley. And back when, these wines were a bit more affordable. Today, the top Burgundy and Bordeaux are beyond the means of most people. So it's when you talk to younger people in the trade, a lot of them have never experienced the great wines of Burgundy and Bordeaux because they're just quite simply too expensive for them. Maybe their customers are lucky enough to afford them, but they by and large are not. So I do a lot of work at the Florida International University's Wine Guild and work with their students. And I love opening a bottle of Grand Cru Classé Bordeaux or a nice Premier Cru or Grand Cru Burgundy and sharing it with 10 or 15 kids, because it's most of them, it's the first time they've ever tasted a wine like that. So yeah, those are among the many reasons. Wine is a beverage of hospitality. It's a convivial social beverage. It goes great with food. I mean, food and wine together and finding that perfect pairing is, something that all of us dream about. So there's a lot of reasons why I find wine so fascinating, but those are some of them.
Thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of folks can be intimidated by wine. And so to make it approachable and not, considered overwhelming, right? But something that can be just enjoyed with food and to create those memories with family and friends around the dinner table or, at your local favorite cafe, whatever it might be. I think that wine really brings people together.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great social lubricant, and many people have bonded over meals together at wine dinners and, just as you said, just over the family dinner table, but also out in restaurants. And, I know people that have become lifelong friends who met at a wine dinner with a winemaker speaking and pouring their wines that evening. And yeah, it's one of those great social ties that bind together. I think a lot of people. It really doesn't matter what your background is, whether you're what side of what political party you support or anything else. You share that common bond. That love of wine. Yeah, very true.
Eric, would you be open to doing a lightning round with me?
Sure.
All right. Are you ready? These are meant to be fun.
I'm ready.
And just whatever comes to your mind first.
Okay.
Okay. If you were stuck on a desert island, which wine would you want to have with you?
I would want something light, crisp, dry, and either white or rosé, because most of the desert islands that I can think of immediately are hot, sunny places. So I want something crisp and refreshing. A nice Riesling or Gruner Veltliner or a Sauvignon Blanc, all go-to wines, but I'm open to any suggestions that you might have. Chocolatey, perhaps, whatever you got.
I love it. Light and crisp on the desert island. You hear that, folks? If you could only eat one cuisine for the rest of your life, what would it be?
My apologies to my French friends, but it would be Italiano.
I agree. Me too, brother. I'm with you with that all the way. Which fictional character would you want to share a glass of wine with?
I think the Count of Monte Cristo would be a favorite.
Yes.
I love those Dumas stories, and the Count of Monte Cristo always resonated with me. The poor guy got completely screwed over and spent years and years rotting in a cold, dank jail cell, and how he escaped and found all those riches on that island and became the mysterious Count of Monte Cristo. I'd love to sit down and really pick his brain on how he was able to pull all that off.
I bet he would be a character.
Oh, yeah.
Literally. Yeah. Eric, what's your guilty pleasure food and wine pairing?
Oh, it sounds a bit mundane, but I love French fries and champagne.
Ooh.
Crisp, salty French fries that are crisp on the outside and tender on the inside with a glass of cold, bubbly is just a real match made in heaven.
I love it. You're making me thirsty and hungry. If you could only keep one type of glassware in your kitchen cabinet, what would it be?
Oh, goodness. I have that's the trouble with Wine Geeks. We have so many different types and sizes and shapes of glassware, but I like the all-purpose Riedel restaurant stem, which goes by the Sangiovese Riesling sort of moniker because it works for lighter red wines. It works for most white wines. So if I had to just go for one, that would probably be it. Doesn't have to be Riedel, but everybody knows that Riedel makes some of the world's finest stemware. So not a shameless promotion, just a matter of fact.
Yeah, there you go. And then finally, if you could have a vineyard anywhere in the world, where would it be?
That's another tough one because there's so many rules and regulations in many European regions. In a perfect world, I suppose it would be in Europe because that was my first love: French wines, Italian wines, and ideally, everybody would love to make great Burgundy, but Burgundy is so expensive and it's a difficult place to make wine, and the climate is not the most hospitable. So I'm just narrowing this down as sort of stream of consciousness thought here. Perhaps somewhere in the south of France, in Provence or Languedoc, or I equally love Tuscany and Piedmont in Italy. Gosh, that's a hard one, Bridget. I suppose it would have to be one of those places. Sorry, that's probably what most people would say. I should surprise you with something like the Swiss Alps. That sort of has the best of both worlds, you know.
There you go. There you go.
You can grow French grapes, German grapes, Italian grapes in Switzerland. So that'd be a good place for a vineyard, actually. It's a beautiful place. The Swiss are friendly, good tax haven. A lot of reasons.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Eric, I just want to thank you so much for spending some time with me here on Served Up. I know that you have inspired our listeners. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for all that you do for hospitality throughout your career. You've had a lengthy career. I know that you have mentored so many. I personally look up to you as a professional and as a friend. I think that you are remarkable for going out there and just doing it and trying. I think that's the hardest thing, right? When you were going through your accreditations, my God, so many folks would just say, no way, but you did it. So for that, my hat is off to you and for your continued good work for our hospitality community. And I just want to wish you some great health and a lot of peace, brother. Thank you for being on Served Up.
Well, you're quite welcome, Bridget. It was really a treat to be here, and thank you for the kind words. I appreciate them. I think doing what we do is so important to continue on into the future. And when you look at some of the younger wine consuming generations now, Gen Z and some of the younger folks, they're not necessarily embracing wine. So I think it's important to work with young industry professionals and college students to instill in them a healthy appreciation for, what we are so much in love with, wine and spirits. It's a wonderful industry, a wonderful profession to join. And I think it's super important. And thank you for what you do and your great contributions to the industry at large as well. So I appreciate being on Served Up. It's been a real pleasure. So if we can do it again in the future, please, be happy to come back.
Would love to have you back. Would love it. Thank you, Eric. Cheers to you.
Cheers to you. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of future Served Up episodes. Cheers!